Hi everyone. I got a little project. I really want you to learn your machines and your presser feet and really start to understand why all those little tools are in your attachment box. One of the things that are on a lot of sewing machines, I don't care if they're 30 years old or if they're current, is decorative stitches. Decorative stitches are up here on the top of the sewing machine or somehow can be programmed. Many years ago we had to put cams in, and the cam would go in and the cam stack would follow along and it would make the needle go from left to right. Nowadays we're computerized and we have mimicked what our grandmothers used to do by hand. There's hem stitching stitches, there's candle wicking stitches, there's stitches for quilting. They aren't just doodads up there that you never use. Many people have expensive sewing machines and do straight stitching, and that's what I'm against. So let's show you a little bit on how to make things just a little bit special, especially with the way garments are right now and clothing and home dec. We're embellishing everything, and embellishing is lots of fun and it'll challenge you a little bit. So this is just a silly little pincushion, but it was a class that we taught that would allow us to put decorative stitches on top of each other and put ribbon and put decorative stitches down and to put it on. So a tiny little square like this made a cute little project. So here is just another one. We had a star on our machine. So we had them take and put red and white together and bring the star up on our machine. It let us learn how to gauge this to make sure it is feeding through properly. What a cute little pillow. You can do it with lots and lots of things. Everyone decorates their house for different holidays or enjoys having something a little bit special or a little bit of a change. These are simple little projects that you can do that don't take a lot of time, that can add a lot of color, and you can have fun with them. So today this is just a little cosmetic bag, a little tote. You can make a purse out of it. You can do whatever. It's a zipper. It's one piece of fabric, put a zipper in, and that's it. But what we want to do is create the fabric today. If you see this, we've done rows and rows and rows, and then we came back and used our different decorative stitches along each line, just like I did on the flag pillow. It makes it lots of fun, and it's fun to do. So we're going to do a little bit of quilt as you go today, and quilting as you go is a fun way to do it. Now remember, you can do this on anything large or as small as you want to. I do my whole t-shirt quilts, get done, quilt as you go. Most of the quilts, if you have an 8-inch opening here, it's kind of hard to put a queen size quilt through there. So, but if you quilt it as you go, you can do anything at all. Now I'll come back another day and do a whole quilt as you go, but I'm going to teach you the technique today just by using a jelly roll. And we're going to quilt and sew this down and decorate it all at the same time. So this is a project that any of you can do. It's going to be done in an afternoon. Even get a grandchild, 12, 14-year-old down here, they will have a ball. Now to get different fabrics that all blend together as a beginner quilter is challenging. You don't want to go buy a 1/4 of a yard or a 1/2 a yard, or much less pull all the fabrics together. I personally can copy anything, but I could not create color. Thank goodness there's lots of people around me that are very good with color that can do that. So one of my favorite things is to use a jelly roll. Now what is a jelly roll? You can see here that it's different colors. It's fabric from one collection. So what a fabric designer does is she creates fabrics, she or he, sorry about that, creates fabrics, and the fabric companies cut the strips in 2.5-inch strips. So that I've got 4 pieces. Look at, can you see how this one will show up better on camera? I got 2 pieces of every color range. So I got 2 of those. Now look, I got 2 of these too. So now it goes into green, and then it goes with the green and white. So instead of me picking out all kinds of colors, I've got them here that all blend together, that match my living room pretty nicely, so that when I get my pillow done, I can just put it out on it. Here's another one just to give us another idea. And they make them lots now. Yeah, I just got in a ton of Halloween ones, a ton of Christmas ones. There's a lot of fun things you can do with a jelly roll, and many of you may know this is one that's been very popular now because it's all the colors with metallic dots on it. So you can see all the colors coming through here. So there's even patterns for jelly roll rugs, jelly roll quilts. There's one that's a jelly roll race. So lots of fun things to do, but it's ways to use these things and have all the colors. Again, a lot of you might be new sewers or new into quilting, and this is a very inexpensive way to get started. Your biggest challenge is to say, well, what color, which one am I going to use first? So what I usually do is separate them so I have the colors separately here. So here's every one. They might be a different pattern, but this is a creamier white. Then I've got closer to a lime green, and I lay them out like this. Now I'm limited a little bit for space due to being on camera, but I think you're going to get the idea. Then I can just go from one to the other to the other to the other and be able to pull them up. So separate them out as you want to. Sometimes I pick my colors as to grab one of every, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put it in a pile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put it in a pile. Believe me, you can spend a lot of time making sure you have them exactly how you want to. It's not worth it, because let me tell you, every one is going to come out really cool anyways. But that's how we're going to work it today, is just to go from one to the other to the other to the other. Don't hesitate on changing anything. We're just trying to give you an idea. I'm using an iron-on batting as my base. You could just use a cotton fabric, but I find the iron-on batting is going to give my fabrics a little bit of body. So here's your trick. So this is I'm just doing an 18 by 18 inch square just for the sake of doing it today. I can put that in as the front of a pillow. I can make this as a tote bag. I can do a front of a tote bag. I got lots of choices. You decide on how big you want to start and then go from there. All I'm going to do is to take my fabric, and my first one is my hardest one, because what I have to do now is I have to make sure that I am covering this corner. So I'm going to lay that on there and stitch this down here. Then it gets easy. I have my sewing machine set up for a regular presser foot. I have it, you could use a 1/4 inch foot would be a better idea, to put a 1/4 inch foot. Your 1/4 inch foot has got a guide that's going to go right along this edge. Or if you have an electronic machine, you now can change your needle position. And you can move your needle over to exactly a 1/4 inch, because I want to work on my left side. Now we have a 1/4 inch foot for the left side, we have one for the right side, but let's say you're working on Grandma's machine and you don't have a 1/4 inch foot. If it's an electronic machine, you can go into your needle positions and you can, and check this in your book, but it's usually your width knob. You're set up for a straight stitch. So you don't need a zigzag at all. Make sense? You don't need the needle to go from left to right. But what I want to do is to move that needle from here center, I want to move it 2 notches over. I want you to try to just adjust your needle over on your width knob. I've got a perfect 1/4 inch. I'm coming down. Oops. Guess I should have helped if I would have threaded the needle first. Let's back up for a minute. I know this never happens to any of you because everything always works perfectly, but once in a while, look how cool this machine threads its needle. All I do is go down, and believe me, it's in the needle. Watch, I'm going to put it on here. I don't have to hold my threads. I don't have to do anything. So I'm going to stitch. I make sure I back tack. Just a second. Come on across. I'm using my 1/4 of an inch on my needle, coming across. When I see that I have reached here, the edge of my batting, that's all I need. Let's back tack for a minute. If you're lucky enough to have scissors, cut your threads. All I have to do is lift my presser foot out and I'm ready for the next row. So now what I'm going to do is come over here and pick my next color. Right sides together, lay it on top of each other, right sides together. Now from here to the end, it's all the same. But until you get to this spot, I had to sew that one piece down first. Stitching. You want the same exact seam allowance on every one of these. Reverse, tack it, and cut my threads. All right, so let's pay attention here for a second. What I need to do now is to bring this over. That stitch has already been stitched. So now I'm just going to lay this over, lay it down flat, and put my next piece of fabric down. And this one we're going to go to a green. You can make a mess here, so give yourself plenty of room. One little tip. When you're working on the bias as I am, because I'm going across horizontally like I am here, right? I need to make sure there's enough fabric out here that when it makes the turn, it will be there for my corner. So let's show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start way out here so that I know when I flip that, I'm okay. Now, if you don't have a 1/4 inch foot, I want you to use the edge of your presser foot and take the exact same measurement, exact same seam allowance every time. Because if you don't, you are going to stitch over the previous seam or miss the previous seam that was already stitched down, and it shows. And heaven help us, we surely don't want to have to rip out. I'm a pro at it, from making mistakes, and that's a-okay. Go a little further now, because we got to make sure the corners, we're going to cut the threads. We're going to lift the fabric up, and here's my point to show you. When this comes down, do you see that this has to cover that whole piece up there? I'm very slim. Do you see here, if you can see this, I'm not right there on that corner. So actually, I needed to lift my material out a little bit further so that it would have covered every bit of this batting. Can you see here where I just made it? So a good 2 to 3 inches out there, I'd say 3, is your better off way to do it. Now this is going to happen to every one of you. You're going to mess up once in a while, here and there. And I do it because it's not a big deal. Because I can go to this side, can you see? I can just cut this off a 1/2 inch if I have to. And now instead of an 18-inch square, I now have a 17.5 or 17.75 inch square instead. So if you think that it's not going to happen to you, it will. So just relax and let it, and just don't cover up for it. Okay, so you can see I'm all set here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press, because I'm first of all using an iron-on batting. The reason for an iron-on batting is I want this to all adhere to my fabrics very, very well. Got it? So I want that iron-on batting on there. Now I cannot take my hot iron and let it touch this part of my quilt, my batting, because that's glue. Does that make sense? So I have to very, very carefully slide over here, lay my fabric down. If you want perfection, press it every time. Have you ever tried one of these little steam fast irons? They're one of the greatest things that they've ever invented, because it gives you the heavy dutiness of a real iron, and it's right here for me, and it's just simple, and it's got steam and everything for you. So just to keep going, to show you what I'm doing, I wouldn't bother to take the time to do this right now if I was making it myself, but to make sure you see what I'm going, you could take your rotary cutter and just cut some of this off. I'm not cutting it exactly perfect. I'll do that with my rotary cutter later. But there's really no sense in having all of these pieces here bothering you, possibly giving you a little bit of problem where you caught them or something. So at this point, I'm giving myself about an inch. Do you see how I got about an inch there past my batting? I'll trim it up once I figure out what I need. So this is ironed on now, right onto the batting. It gives you a real nice feel. And you're not going to, by doing it, you're not going to have this pucker up on me. It's all going to lay very nicely. So every couple, take the time to press it. Let's keep going because I want to come back and do a few more. I want to make sure what we're doing here. Now, for your sake, when you're buying this jelly roll, and jelly rolls sell from $35 to $40, buy the good quality fabric because if you're doing something, it's worth your time. Now, I could go ahead and use these same strips that I just put on here and have the same strips keep changing. And I wouldn't have to waste this piece, right? Or I can choose, well, I've done this one, my green's on the floor, right? So I want to go into this blue. And the reason why I want to go into this teal color is because, oops, I got to go to white first. It's white in between. So I want to go into this teal color so that I can get that, because that's one of the accent parts of my room. Now looking here, it's hard for you to see, but in this particular, let's see if I can show you in green. In this particular jelly roll, there's different geometric prints, okay? So it's green with white geometric prints. So I can also choose that. So here I just used a green with whatever you call that. So the first thing I picked out was a white with the same geometric design on it. Well, how about just going a little bit to the bottom of that pack, and I've got one that's got circles. Do you see? So you want to kind of change them up if you can. So a jelly roll is 42 inches across by 2.5 inches. And having these on hand to be able to do a simple project when you just got a little bit of time, or you got someone over, or you're teaching someone new, or some of you may be way past this, but I'll tell you what, take your pleasure of sewing and your talent of sewing and pass it along. You will be surprised how much fun an 8-year-old has sitting at a sewing machine and creating something like this. I get it, it's nothing for you, may not be, but to others, they can't believe it. We have different schools we work with, and the school systems are starting programs where the young kids can go in there during breaks and sew. And oh man, are they having fun. We're getting all kinds of letters showing how much fun they have. And these are the kind of projects that they can get onto really quick. So do you see what I'm doing here? And keep building right on down and press that down. That's what I'm going for. So now you can just keep going and going and going, and you're going to create this large piece of fabric. But for the sake of the video, let's take it, and I want to teach you how to do decorative stitches on it. Because that's what my real goal is to make you learn to use your sewing machine. Different presser feet with your sewing machine are for different reasons, just like there's different knives in your kitchen or tools. So we're going to go over it again. There's presser feet like this one, that's your main presser feet. I'd really like you to pull yours out. Some of you have never used them. Some of you don't know what they're for. It kind of blows my mind. Back in the 60s, they gave everybody a ruffler and a gathering foot with machines, and nobody knew how to use them. Nowadays, they're one of the most popular feet that people buy. So a tool is a tool, and learning to use them makes our life easier. The difference is the cutout at the bottom, at the back of the foot, and I realize this is hard to see, so I need to get yours out. Your normal one is going to be pretty flat back here because it wants the fabric to go smoothly as I was making my pillow. This one is completely cut out. It's called a pattern foot or decorative stitch foot, but it is actually cut out there to allow the extra bulk from my decorative stitching to go over. So it is cut out here. You got to feel it. It's hard to be able to show. That presser foot came with your sewing machine. Even if it's 30 years old, it came with it. It might be plastic. The metal ones are a little better because they hold the fabric better, but you can always get a new one. But it came with your machine. Now, there's a new presser foot that works with your machines, and it works with all machines, and they are called an open toe. So it's an open toe presser foot. So now what do we need that for? And it's simple, so we can tell where we're going. So it is completely cut out at the back, and I will be able to put it on, and I will be able to see the edge of my fabric and follow along so easily. So an open toe foot never comes with sewing machines, but if you're into committing that you want to learn to use all these stitches and to have them, you will find that you will very much enjoy them. And it's a well worth investment of being able to use it. It's available for all machines. If you go into your local dealer, I suggest you either take a picture of this area or bring me the shank, or coming in and saying I need an open toe foot doesn't quite work. There's high shank, there's low shank, there's mid shank, there's different styles. Every brand, every model might have something different. If it's current, we can usually find it for you, but taking a picture, knowing your model number does help. I'm going to snap my foot on, put my presser foot under, and now what kind of thread should I be using? Because I want to do a little bit of decorative stitching, and I want to do a little bit of fun, and I wanted to kind of introduce you into some variegated threads and some different threads that are on the market. And that can be lots and lots of fun. So I take off a little bit of this. This is a variegated, it's a Madeira thread. It's kind of pretty. It's got a little bit of red and teal in it. It might be very nice along here. So that's going to be a 40 weight thread. Now here, I got a 30 weight thread. And it's all just the teals and the greens. And you can put that on top. Do you see how I got it? So you can waste a little bit of thread. It's okay. That one's really pretty. It's really going to pull up just my teal. It's got a little bit of yellow in it though. And then I could have just went and did a plain green on it, whichever way I wanted to. We'll go with this one. So that's a good way. Now, if you can't stomach throwing this thread away, what I want you to do is just start a Ziploc bag and just keep these little spools of thread, little threads. Another time we can lay them all out and I can free motion around them and show you a really cool confetti look. So if you start saving these, you might be ready for me when I do another video on that. I've had people take them and put them in and give them to the birds, whatever you want to do, but it's okay. You don't have to keep every inch of it. I have bags this big full of it in my sewing room waiting for me to do a project with it, and it's going to be a fun one to do. So I'm going to take my 30 weight thread now. Now this is a sulky 30 weight. It's a little bit heavier, but it's going to make my decorative stitches just show up so nicely. I do have to prepare for it though. I have to have a bigger eye needle. The needles, we want to use a top stitch needle. A top stitch needle is 5 times larger than normal than what a regular sewing machine needle is. A top stitch needle, so it's easier to thread. If you have a sewing machine that doesn't have a wonderful threader like mine, which you can watch right here, put the presser foot down and all I do is go like this and it's threaded for me. So let's say you don't have one of those. Top stitch needles, I give them to my mom. and my mom uses them on her old machine because she can't see through it to thread the needle so much. So I give her the top stitch needles, and the needle eye is bigger. Now the shank of the needle isn't any change, and it will fit in all your sewing machines and use them as normal, and it's a wonderful tool, just wonderful. I would tell you they were designed to be able to use different threads through the needle. So I have a 30 weight thread. We normally sew with a 50 weight thread. In thread, the smaller the number, the heavier the thread is. It works like yarn. Okay? So, because I'm a 30 weight thread, that means I'm much heavier. When I go down to a 10 and a 12 weight thread, I'm much heavier again. So, but it's a lot of fun to do work with all these threads. That's why new machines are so exciting. Okay, so now I want to choose my decorative stitch. I always want to start off with something and test out the stitch one time, make sure my tensions are perfect, whatever I need to do are perfect before I'm going to go on to my project. So what I want to do is possibly, I'm using a heavy 30 weight thread on my top, and I'm using a pre-wound bobbin in my bobbin. What a pre-wound bobbin is 60 or 90 weight thread. And what it allows the fabric to do is not pull up the bobbin thread as far. So, because I'm using something so much heavier, I want it to stay a little bit down in the bottom. Now, the reason why I want to stay it down in the bottom is because I don't want any knots to show up on the top of my work. Who could care less on the inside of my pillow? I want my top to look like satin. So I've loosened my tension just a number. I have put on my open toe foot. I have a top stitch needle in my machine. I have a pre-wound bobbin in my machine, and I have regular thread, a 30 weight decorative thread on top. You can go ahead and use regular thread that you've been using and do this. Again, we're trying to learn more as to what these decorative stitches are. I want you pleased with the way the decorative stitches work, so you're enchanted to be able to go and do the next project. So I'm just got my machine set up. I have picked up a stitch, and I'm going to let it run and see how I like it. This is called a crow's feet stitch. Let's see how it looks. Let's cut it, let's check it, and see how I do. Now, I'm hoping you can see this by a variegated thread that it changes from the yellow to the cream to a green. You don't have any control, but this particular thread goes from yellow to cream to green to teal. Yellow, cream, green to teal. The bottom of it has white here, and I can still see my yellow, cream, teal, green, and teal, a tiny little bit. So that makes my stitch up here just lay really, really nicely. Let's try it on my garment now, or right on my pillow now, and see how you like it. The edge of my presser foot now is going to go right against the edge of my previous stitching. So then it will be even on every single one. So I'm ready to go. Let's give it a run and see how we like it. Now this is what I want you to see and to kind of understand. I'm very careful that the edge of my presser foot on the inside is going against my seam. Look here, not the edge of my presser foot out here, on the inside. Following me? So I'm following along and I'm watching it. I'm not pulling it and I'm not helping it. Going like this and helping it is going to distort those stitches. I want to slow down 1 minute. I have a speed control, so I can slow down to very slow. To get one stitch to go across from left to right, I think this particular pattern takes 16 needle strikes to go from left to right, much less coming back. Do you see? By having an electronic machine, the needle is able to go up and down more often to create my pattern for me. That's why we're able to create things that Grandma used to do by hand. And all those stitches can be made on machines now. I didn't have to use any stabilizer because I have my iron-on batting. If you were just doing this with fabric, you would be smart to have a little bit of an iron-on stabilizer to give this some positiveness, some strength for me to be able to stitch on it. But I actually have 2 seams and ran my stitch over. Is that not cool? See? And it just adds a little bit. This one being on green, I might just take a simpler stitch or possibly take a straight stitch. Let's just do that. And then when I come back to the white, let's use a fancy decorative stitch there. Then it'll go on to the teal next, and you can see what I'm creating here. And we're going to go to here. Oops, see? Numbers, numbers, no go. Here and right on. Pretty fun, huh? So lots of fun. So let's just take a straight stitch just for fun today and make sure you see how you like that. All I'm doing is straight stitching across this. Sometimes a little longer stitch length is pretty, and you can change in it and it will look more decorative. Coming across, knotting, cutting my threads, lift up my presser foot, and if you can see this closely, it changed from the yellow to the cream to the green to the blue to the green. Pretty cool. Trying to get that to start at the exact same one. So if you look back here, I started on a green. Now I have been anal enough to do this, but just to give you a little hint, of course it's not necessary, but there has been times that I wanted the very beginning of my stitch to start at the same color. So if it was red, white, and blue, I might want it to start at the blue each time so it matched. So what you can do is just take your needle and you can pull it out till you get to that yellow again and start right up with that, and you'll be at the exact same spot and they will match. Again, some of these stitches take more thread than another stitch is going to do. So it really doesn't help you. You can't keep it unless, of course, you wanted the exact same stitch in the exact same way every single time. Let's grab another stitch on here just to give you a fun look on it. Let's go to simple. I'll just do number 33 on my machine. This is a blanket stitch. I could have lengthened it, I could have made it wider, I could have done anything, but changing it, remember you have your width knob and you have your length knob, and you can change anything you want to. Use your needle up, needle down. See how that's going to hold the fabric for me while I'm readjusting. Now what I wanted you to do was to iron every piece down, which I've done. So before I would go any further, I would have had the next areas ironed. There's no sense in you changing from putting the pieces down to doing decorative stitches as I am. I'm just trying to give you ideas here and tell you as much in a short amount of time as I can. You go ahead and lay all your pieces down and sew them on and iron them on, and then you can decide if you want to do the embellishments of your decorative stitches. As I'm stitching down here, the only thing I want to remind you is that you can't put your hands on here. There's a big difference between guiding and stopping. So I got light fingertips, everyone, light fingers, because it's going back and forth so often that if you put it, it's gonna stay in the same spot. And you'll blame it on the machine, and it's not the machine, it's us, but let it go, let it guide. Do you see why it's so important now to have the presser foot that is the open toe and that is cut out here? Because that cutout allows for that extra decorative stitch. And look how much that adds to it. Isn't that pretty? And that is actually added bulk to my fabric. So I needed that foot to be cut out back there to be able to go across. Now many of you have a gorgeous decorative stitch like this. Let's learn to use them and get them out and have some fun with them. All we have to do now is just continue going across, and then I am all quilted. I've already got my batting done. There's no reason to sew anything together. There's no reason to nothing. Square it off, put a piece on the back, maybe make a matching one on the back. Doesn't take very long. So I want you to get out there, get out your presser feet, give it a try, see if you can find that patterned foot I'm talking about, or go out and get you an open toe foot and get on that sewing machine you have. Enjoy it. Thank you.